So, in order to complete the discussion or talk about all aspects of circulation and maintaining homeostasis, it's important that we talk about the lymphatic system. And you may not have heard much about the lymphatic system before, so this first slide just kind of compares the circulatory system, the parts of the circulatory system and the parts of the lymphatic system. So the circulatory system is basically made up of the heart and the different types of vessels that carry our blood and materials throughout your body. The lymphatic system is comprised of your thymus gland, which is probably, it shrinks as you get older, so it's probably pretty small in you guys at this point. The spleen, the lymph nodes. So the lymph nodes are those clusters or kind of look like little lumps along the lymphatic vessels. And then the lymphatic vessels themselves. One of the large lymphatic vessels is the thoracic duct. And that's, basically your lymphatic system, it has several functions which we're going to talk about, but eventually the blood connects, the materials in the lymph connects back up with the circulatory system so that it can be returned as components of plasma in your blood. So let's take a look. For some reason, it's freezing up. Let's see. Oh, yep, there we go. Sorry. So, what is lymph? If you think of what is floating around in your blood, sorry. Okay, so if you think of what is floating around in your blood, when your blood reaches your capillaries, then whatever fluids can fit out through the capillary walls, so anything except for red blood cells and proteins and things like that, the rest of the materials, the water and dissolved substances, a lot of your plasma will be forced out due to the pressure so that nutrients and oxygen can be delivered to the cells. But there's also some wastes that are like pathogens and things like that can be forced out of your blood vessels and into the surrounding area surrounding your tissues. So the material that's there is, a lot of it will be picked back up at the other end of your capillaries, but some of it is left out in the tissue area, so bathing the tissues, and we call that lymph. So lymph is the clear liquid that bathes your tissues. It's kind of like blood plasma because it's originated from your blood vessels, but there's no red blood cells. It carries really small proteins, bacteria, or other pathogens, large cellular debris, and wastes. And it helps to carry them back so it can be filtered, and then anything that's useful can be taken back to your blood vessels. There's also special lymphatic vessels associated with your small intestine that will help to carry fatty acids and glycerol. So when you break down fats, those are the components, fatty acids and glycerol, and they carry them from your intestine to your circulatory system. So then we can use them in our nutrition. And we'll talk about that a little bit more whenever we do digestion. The lymph also supplies lymphocytes, or white blood cells, to the blood to fight infection. So the lymph nodes themselves and other parts of the lymphatic system will produce lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell, which helps to fight the infections. So this is just showing the green is one of the lymphatic vessels, and it kind of is found amongst the tissues. So this is a bunch of cells that make up a tissue, and then the fluid that's surrounding the tissues will all be picked up by the lymphatic vessel and then filtered and carried back to the circulatory system. So, lymphatic vessels are a system of channels or vessels that carry excess extracellular fluid or intercellular fluid, not intra, but inter, which means between cells, along with the pathogens, debris, and other contents that are in it, away from the tissues. Okay, so this is kind of like the diagram where we talked about how materials go out of the capillaries and are picked up by the capillaries. So the red is an arteriole. This purple part in the middle is capillary, and then the blue is a venule. Okay, so the blood comes in under high pressure through the arteriole. Materials are forced out at the arterial end of the capillary, and then a good portion of it, like usually 90% of the fluid, along with some waste, are picked up at the venule end and carried back to the heart or to other tissues. Okay, the green interspersed in here are lymphatic vessels. Okay, so they're always there and ready to catch any of that excess fluid. Okay, so normally 90% of the fluid returns to the circulatory system. So when it's forced out of the capillaries, 90% of it is picked back up. But the 10% that remains as lymph has to be carried away. Otherwise, if it's not carried away, then more and more is going to be added to it, and then we end up with tissue swelling, which we call edema. edema. Right, so functions of the lymphatic system include helping maintain balance of fluids in the body, absorbing excess interstitial fluid and returning it to the circulatory system, carrying fatty acids and glycerol from the small intestine to the circulatory system so they can be transported where it can be used by the body. And they have lymph nodes, which provide lymphocytes and house macrophages to help fight infection. They also help to filter. This is just another view, the same thing. So, how do lymph vessels work to carry the lymph away from the tissues? They work much like veins do. Okay, they don't have any kind of pump like the heart pushing the lymph through them. So they have valves and they work like veins. Our skeletal muscles contract and it forces the lymph towards the heart. So it goes up more towards the heart, and then when the muscles relax, the valves will close and trap the lymph closer to the heart. What are lymph nodes? So if you look down here, there's tons and tons of lymph nodes through your body. There's a lot of them concentrated in your armpits and your groin, a lot of them in your neck region. So when you get sick, a lot of times the lymph nodes of your throat region will tend to swell. So they might swell, like the doctor will check for swelling underneath your chin or behind your ears, because those are signs that your lymph nodes are filtering out bacteria or other infectious agents, other pathogens that are making you sick. And they swell up as they filter the debris. So, they are basically enlargements along the lymph vessel. They house white blood cells, macrophages, the phagocytotic ones, in other words, the ones that will capture the pathogens. And so they filter the lymph. They engulf and destroy the bacteria or other pathogens. They also destroy damaged cells and some debris. They also store lymphocytes that produce antibodies, so they're really important in your immune system too. So this is just, you were asked a question in the case study as well, but to describe how lymph may re-enter your bloodstream. So basically, your upper right side is the lymph from your upper right side eventually enters the right lymphatic duct, and then goes into the right subclavian vein, which for some reason it's down kind of low there. Okay, so here's your right subclavian vein. The right lymphatic duct is closely associated with the right subclavian vein, and your clavicle is your collarbone. So when they say subclavian, it means it runs under your clavicle. So the one on your right side is going to accept lymph that's drained from your upper right region. Your upper left region, on the other hand, your abdominal region and your legs, so your whole lower body and your upper left side, are all going to be drained through that big vessel that we saw in one of the early slides, but the thoracic duct. Okay, so the lymph from the upper left and then your whole lower body enters through the thoracic duct, then through the left lymphatic duct, and then into the left subclavian vein. Okay, so it's a little different on your right and your left. Your whole lower body is drained through the thoracic duct. I think that's it. Yep. That's the basics. That's all we're going to really talk about in terms of the lymphatic system. There is a little animation that I can show you, and there's also another video if you want to learn more about, the functions of the spleen with regards to it. There's a link on the class notes page that you can watch, but here's a little video that'll kind of help too. So that's it for a discussion on the lymphatic system.